President Donald Trump is set to make his first Asia trip since returning to office, positioning the region at the center of renewed diplomatic and economic attention. As the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the APEC summit in South Korea, approaches on October 30th, anticipation is building around a possible historic meeting between Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, an encounter that could signal the resumption of stalled nuclear talks and a delicate recalibration of regional security. Simultaneously, Trump is confirmed to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping on the summit sidelines, facing escalating trade tensions that threaten to reshape U.S.-China relations with looming tariffs and strategic disputes. These high-profile engagements underscore the complexity and significance of Trump's Asia trip amid shifting geopolitical landscapes and economic imperatives. The world watches closely. Can Trump navigate these challenges to reshape the future of Asia-Pacific diplomacy? Let's get in focus. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has recently accelerated missiles tests as a strategic move to prompt a meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump during his upcoming Asia trip. According to Bloomberg, in early October and again in late October 2025, North Korea tested 5 ballistic missiles, including new hypersonic systems, signaling both military strength and willingness to engage diplomatically. These launches come amid stalled nuclear talks since 2019 and reflect Pyongyang's push for recognition as a nuclear state and relief from UN sanctions, while Trump has publicly expressed interest in resuming dialogue with Kim. The missile tests serve as a reminder of North Korea's leverage ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the APEC summit in South Korea. The missile activities underscores Kim's intent to use both military demonstrations and diplomacy to gain concessions, challenging the U.S. to respond as Trump visits the region. As President Trump prepares for his Asia meeting with Kim Jong-un, and new alliances. So we're joined from Doha to discuss the refinements and prospects of this possible historic encounter is Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, a Global Foreign Policy Center Executive Director. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to In Focus. And let me start by asking you, in the broad terms, how significant would a meeting between Trump and Kim be, given, of course, their history and the current geopolitical context?
Well, good evening, Mona. Always good to see you. The significance is going to be real. I mean, you have to understand something. I mean, when it comes to isolated nations, North Korea tops the list if it's not top 3. Kim Jong-un is been pretty much been isolated as a world leader. Nobody really deals with him. Very until just recently, we haven't seen a lot of bilateral movement. Now, that being said, with the tension between Washington and Moscow, Washington and Beijing, Moscow and Beijing have taken full advantage of this. We just saw, a big parade in Beijing where both Putin and Kim were there. So that's kind of sparked this, and I think Donald Trump is trying to mitigate it, showing that he's kind of the bigger player that he wants to be on the world stage with, he being Kim. So it's very significant, and it's going to send a lot of shockwaves. How it's interpreted is another story.
Right. From the other side, has North Korea sent any kind of signals that should suggest a willingness to engage?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think there's always been a kind of an inherent dialogue between Kim and Trump. They were writing love letters to each other back in the first Trump administration. I would venture to say that connectivity has probably continued. And that's not to mention that there are probably some back channel discussions that are going on. One thing that kind of shows the colors a little bit on this is the fact that, the announcement on the possible Kim Trump meeting came from the South Korean Unification Ministry, which is kind of an odd place for it to come from, but that kind of signals that there has been some back channel dialogue between Pyongyang, Seoul, and Washington, and vice versa. So, the relationship is there between Trump and Kim Jong Un. The reality is, how far has that relationship developed since Trump took office 10 months ago? And are they going to be able to capitalize on the same kind of, romance politically that they've had in the Trump first administration?
But then, how does the expansion of North Korea's nuclear capabilities since 2019 complicate the diplomatic efforts?
Well, it complicates it because of the complicated relationship that North Korea is playing in this game. The tension of North Korea, the tension of China and its expansion of the North Sea, its economic push globally, has put it it's kind of built a speed bump between Washington and Beijing. When we see pictures of Xi and Kim becoming very close, talking very, very bilaterally, if you will, it kind of draws the attention to the fact that, in this instance, Kim is going to build on the relationship that best suits him and his needs. In this case, I think, I give the advantage to the BRICS alliance, namely to Putin in Moscow and Xi in Beijing. I think Trump is trying to flex his muscles and still stay at the top of the relevancy scale when it comes to North Korea.
What role do Russia and China now play in North Korea's strategic calculations?
Oh, it's top of their list right now. I mean, on top of the fact that you have to realize historically China has been North Korea's kind of trading, trading leader. It's been their only trading partner in many instances, with a little bit coming from Russia. That kind of relationship definitely plays into the mindset of Kim and the leadership in Pyongyang. The thing about it now is, does Donald Trump have to, and particularly with the fact, again, I go back to the fact that we saw Kim Jong-un at the BRICS conference. We saw Kim very prominently displayed in that little trilateral gathering at the military parade between Russia, China, and North Korea. So, it plays very, very heavily on how North Korea is going to look. In the Trump first administration, Trump basically gave Kim a world stage, made him relevant almost overnight by having the bilateral talks. Now what we're seeing is Russia and China are probably doing the same thing and offering economic incentives, something that Trump cannot offer unless he withdraws all sanctions and all punitive actions against North Korea. The reality is it's very relevant to North Korea, and it's very relevant to the geopolitical scene, at least for now.
So, what do we need to know about Trump's personal and political motivation for pursuing this meeting?
Trump wants to show that he's right. Trump wants to show that he is the great deal maker. He wants to show that he is the president of peace. Trump wants to show that he can go to Asia have a bilateral meeting with Kim, and get him to possibly reduce his development of anything from ICBMs, reduce the development of a possible nuclear strike program, and possibly have Kim kind of maybe engage a little bit, not as the hermit, but as a up and coming person to deal with in Asia. That's what Trump's hoping for. Is it going to happen? I doubt it. There's really no advantage when you have the BRICS alliance and you have Moscow and Beijing behind you, and you can use that. You're talking about the second largest economy and one of the largest oil economies or oil reserves in the world in China and Russia. Why do you want to listen to to Donald Trump? What does he have to offer?
Mm-hmm. How credible are the U.S. media reports about arrangements being underway for such a meeting?
Well, again, I think the fact that this was kind of tipped off by the Unification Ministry, and the Unification Ministry, just for clarification, it's a South Korea branch of government that has been working with its North Korean counterparts to look at the possibility of unification of one Korea. It kind of started with Olympic Games some years ago, and it's kind of morphed. It runs very hot and cold there in Korea. But the fact that it was tipped off and it was kind of announced by the Unification Ministry is a telling sign that this is probably going to happen. We're starting to see some, we're starting to see some buzz come out of the White House right now, giving indications that the White House is going to acknowledge it. But I would venture to say that this is very viable unless something drastic happens. I think it's more possible than not.
Mm-hmm. From your own perspective as a political analyst, what are the biggest obstacles to a meaningful dialogue resuming?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, Mona. I really can't answer that, and here's why. Because if we're looking at it geopolitically from a national security standpoint, so North Korea plays a very, very harmful role as a non-allied state, particularly in Asia, but globally. Their cybersecurity capabilities are very offensive. They're increasing their production. You mentioned at the beginning of the segment about their ballistic missile programs that they keep launching over key allies like Japan, which makes them quite nervous. So there's a lot of things in play that kind of lead us to, what is the end game here? There's a possible benefit that if Kim can convince Trump that, hey, look, you know what, I want to be a partner, I can be an adult in the room, then, there's a possibility there could be financial incentives for North Korea to start playing nicely in the global community. But again, I don't think that it's. I mean, he's a political tyrant. He's the supreme leader. So that being the case, it doesn't do any benefit to him politically in his own country, other than the fact that he gets to show that he's meeting one of the most powerful men in the world, and he can say he's one of the most powerful men in the world because they requested the meeting. And then regionally, it also shows the fact that they are looking to at least meet and talk. There is that capability of going to a track one method of diplomacy instead of this track two that usually happens through back channels.
So from a point of view, do you think South Korea could influence this potential Trump-Kim summit?
I do. And here's why. I think number one, it's in Seoul's interest to kind of lessen the tension between Pyongyang and Seoul. You've got a new president there, a relatively new president there in South Korea. And, I think President Lee is going to be looking very closely at how they can politically maneuver and kind of act as a mediator between North Korea, the Asian community, or the Asian geopolitical scene, and then the global geopolitical scene. I think that what we're really going to be looking for is how does South Korea message this, and do they use this as again, the unification ministry talking about this, one could look at how do we read that? Maybe there is a need or a desire on both sides of the border for reunification to maybe come up. But the only way reunification comes up is if there's buy-in from the big superpowers. And this could be a prelude to it, which would make sense for South Korea to push it.
Right. We thank you so much, Mr. Justin Thomas Russell, the Global Foreign Policy Center Executive Director. We thank you so much for sharing your expert insights onto this developing events. And while the possibility of Trump meeting Kim Jong-un dominates headlines, another critical encounter looms on the APEC sidelines. That is the one between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The stakes are equally high as trade tensions simmer and strategic competition intensifies.
Donald Trump is his name, and he's there to stay.
As unlikely, impossible is now reality.
We will make America powerful. We will win, win, win. And we will make America great again. Let's do our encouragement. We will very quickly make America great again.
U.S. President Donald Trump is confirmed to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping on October 30th in Busan, South Korea, on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the APEC summit, according to South China Morning Post. This will be their first face-to-face meeting since Trump resumed office in January 2025 and the first in-person encounter since 2019. The meeting comes amid escalating trade tensions. Trump has threatened to impose a 100% tariff on Chinese imports starting in November if China does not ease restrictions on rare earth exports. The summit runs October 31st to November 1st in Jeju, with Trump's broader Asia trip including stops in Malaysia and Japan. Both leaders seek to de-escalate tensions and possibly pave the way for a trade agreement amid critical deadlines and intensified geopolitical challenges. To unpack the complexities and implications of this meeting, we welcome Mr. Benny Cook, a seasoned Chinese political analyst based in Hong Kong. Mr. Benny, good afternoon to you, or good evening, and a pleasure to have you with us here. Now, if I may ask you, how would you characterize the current state of U.S.-China trade relations as they approach this high-profile meeting?
Hello, thank you for inviting me. So I would say currently United States-China relations is getting worsening because you're seeing both countries not just having quarrels and arguing on trade matters. They have already have many all-rounded, not just competitions. They are dealing with the challenge. They're competing for the bargaining power for the global order. They are competing with the so-called ideological matters on how to which country or which kind of global governance is good for the world, not just the economy but also the political and also the cultural matters as well. So I would say for these high-profile meeting, of course, it's important for Donald Trump because it is the first meeting with Xi Jinping since he get his second office, and also is both for China and the United States try to have a, I would say it's a chance for both delegations and the both leaders to try to test, okay, what the leaders is going to think and what is going to talk, what they are thinking. Because without the meetings of the leaders, I would say both countries cannot grasp the whole picture on what the other countries thinking about. So I would say yes, this meeting is important at least for both countries to try to grasp. Okay, what is current state? What benefit could for each side, and also what the other thinks at this moment.
So, from your point of view, what is the significance of Trump threatening 100% tariff on Chinese imports, especially the rare earth materials?
Of course, China is trying to get the revenge. Not just the revenge. I would say China. Of course, the trump card for China is, of course, China is the rare earth. So that's why we are seeing Trump is using so-called revenge. Status of revenge is to put in 100 tariff on China's imports. But of course, I don't think Donald Trump would impose the 100% tariff, because we are seeing him doing many times that his tariff, so-called a very high tariff, is just a way to do negotiations with other countries. Of course, it would be useful for Donald Trump to impose or to force the U.S. allies, because many of them relies on depends on the U.S. economy dominance, and also they relies on the U.S. military protections as well. But of course, for China, I don't think it's really useful, and I don't think Donald Trump is really imposing such a really high percentage on tariff. It's just, I would say, okay, showing that the United States is not going to back down and doing the United States is going to trying to bow. It is just a way to show U.S. to stay strong as well.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it is important for the United States to do so, because at this moment, both sides could not behave weak. They have to behave strong to the public, to the global, and so that's why we were seeing both countries. Some say they are doing the chicken game, and I would say both countries is trying to see which country is going to back down to get behind at the last moment. So I would say both Xi Jinping, both Donald Trump, we will behave strong, stay strong for at least for until next year, when the midterm elections of the U.S. and they a little bit will be changed, because the Republicans may not stay fully holds the power in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or the APEC Summit, would provide a platform for this kind of bilateral negotiation?
Okay. The APEC itself is, I would say, is a talk shop, because the APEC historically is so-called forcing the Pacific countries for the economic and trade cooperation. But at this moment, APEC, Asia Pacific, has already been divided into two, at least for so-called the Indo-Pacific is more pro-US, or maybe in Southeast Asia they are standing in the middle, and also China is supporting and also creating another so-called China friend through China economic circle. So I would say, okay, APEC summit, okay, is still ongoing, but it is just it is a hollow. It's being hollow. I would say it's just a place for the countries to do the bilateral relations. Yes, it is useful for them, but it doesn't contain much meaning on the APEC itself, because the APEC summit from day one to now, the meaning has been changed a lot, and I don't think currently the coming APEC meeting would create. I don't think it would create any peaceful atmosphere now, because the decoupling between United States and China will still go on.
Right. Now, beyond tariffs, what other issues are likely to dominate the agenda of this meeting?
Okay. Of course, tariff is just one of the matters, or just one of the maneuvers that the United States put pressure on China, and it is also one of the matters that China concerned from the pressure of the United States. Besides tariffs, of course, Taiwan, South China Sea would be another very important issues for both countries that you're going to deal with, because tariff is about the economic order and about the trade, and Taiwan is about the geopolitical power that which country could control or dominate, would have a very high influence on Taiwan Strait or in the South China Sea, then the country would control the coming global trade maritime route. That would be the key for the coming global economy order. So I would say, but of course, such kind of meeting, even though both leaders would, of course, they would raise the Taiwan problems, they would raise the South China Sea problems, they would raise the tariff, but I don't think, okay, it's just for, I would say just there, just do it. They need to say what they have to say, but I don't think such high-level meeting would have such kind of problem be solved, because it is a structural differences between the two countries. Such problems may have to be solved by some military conflicts. It is not that really easy to be solved in a negotiation table.
Mm-hmm. Now, how, from your point of view, might China respond diplomatically and economically if these tariffs were not imposed, and what exactly are the risks if no agreement would be reached before the November 10th, when the agreement expires, or when the trade agreement would expire?
If Donald Trump do impose some kind of tariff on China, I would say China would speed up on diversifying its export to other parts of the world, and so that's how you are seeing the trade China exporting the United States has been dropped a lot, and the export to Africa and other developing countries has been increased a lot. So I would say such trend, if the meetings just fail, and Trump do have some certain kind of tariffs imposing on China, I would say the trend for China to trying to divert its export to the developing countries will speed up. And yes, it is one of the trends that many of us should have to look at. And for the diplomatically, I would say with Without this meeting, China has already strengthened its so-called this global South cooperation. And after this meeting, such global South cooperation, China leads global South cooperation will still go on. Whether this meeting is they will meet or whether they wouldn't meet, such kind of trend is also go on. So that's why I would say the structural competitions between the United States and China would still go on. Whether this
yes, Mr. Kwok, it's clear what you want to say here, and it remains to be seen. Mr. Benny Kwok, we thank you so much for your valuable analysis on this critical juncture in U.S.-China relations. And we've been watching In Focus, and stay tuned for more analysis and perspectives on the top stories shaping our world on Qnews.